Okay, so I can still go in and edit. So, if we kind of get off track or anything, just let me know. And
Okay.
but I'm sure you've answered these questions a bunch of times. But I'm just grateful that you are here. So my guest today is Heather Robertson, and she is founder of the site, the podcast, the program, Half Size Me. So Heather, thank you for coming on the virtual couch.
Oh, thank you for having me, Tony. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, and I know you again. I'm so flattered that you're on the podcast. I know you do a lot of this. So, are you okay with just briefly sharing your story?
Absolutely. So how far back do you want me to go?
Well, of course, as I'm a therapist, go ahead and lay down and let's talk about your mom and dad, right? So, you don't have to go that
Yes.
far back. And you have a great video on your site, by the way, in your YouTube channel that does put it pretty succinctly. So, just kind of your general story of your journey.
Absolutely. So I can't really remember a time where I didn't struggle with being obese or morbidly obese. Ever since I was a young child, I started binge eating around the age of 8.
Mm.
And my weight yo-yoed all through my life. I did all kinds of diets, weight cycled. And it wasn't until when my son was going to be born, 2006, that I decided to start treating this whole weight loss thing differently. I really focused on maintenance, sustainable habit change. And I lost weight in between 3 pregnancies and having 3 boys and hitting my goal weight in 2012. And what I have done with that is, since I figured out a way to do this in a sustainable fashion, is I started a podcast to help keep me accountable, help educate other people, give them hope and inspiration that this can be done. And I've been maintaining my weight loss since 2012. But for me, every day is a gift, because I know what it's like to live in obesity and not having full range of motion with my body. And I feel like it's a way for me to kind of give back and to help others find that same success for themselves.
Great. And then you talked, Heather, on your in the video, it says that you peaked at 313 pounds, right?
Yeah, I did.
Now, and ironically, I run this race, this Super Bowl of ultra marathons whenever I can. And my number I always choose is 313. I don't know if there's any coincidence there. If that was meant to be. 13's always been my favorite number. I don't know. But anyway, there's a moment where you said it was your most humiliating moment. Do you remember that part of the video?
Yeah, there was a lot of times I had humiliating moments, but the part that really, I think, hit me hard was, 2 come to mind. One, when I went in to have my first OBGYN appointment with my doctor, and I always wanted to be a mom. I was always excited about having a kid and wanting to be a good mom. And I walked in and he's like, "What's the highest weight you've ever been?" And I said, "Well, 290 pounds is the highest weight I had ever been to that point." And he said, "Well, we're starting there. And I really don't want you to gain any weight during this pregnancy." And
Wow.
I just cried and sobbed. And I just felt so low, because all I had ever done, Tony, was gain weight. I mean, that's what I I knew how to do. Now to tell a pregnant woman, don't gain weight is like, asking her to do a feat of impossible, right? That was number one. And that's, I think, the moment when I decided my life had to change at some point. Like, that I could not keep doing this forever and ever and ever. And then the second most humiliating point was when I had my son. And I had gotten over to a number I never thought I would see, which you had mentioned, it was 313. I never thought I would see myself go over 300 pounds. And when I saw that, and after having nursed him and been home for 6 or 8 weeks, whatever it was, I thought for sure my weight would have come back under 300. But seeing it stay above that just was crushing. My home scale that I had at that time didn't even go up to 300 pounds. So I had to go buy a new scale. And I just, again, sobbing and just feeling completely defeated. And like, the weight of the world is sitting on your chest. Like, you just think to yourself, I'm never going to come out from underneath of this. And that's how I felt.
Well, and a super quick comment too, that episode with the doctor, I have a lot of my clients that talk about not even wanting to go into the doctor just because of that scale, or what the feeling like they're going to be shamed for their weight. Did you have that experience throughout your life?
Over and over and over again. I can't tell you. I'm thankful I dealt with my weight at a young enough age that I probably didn't have a reason. You know, a lot of times people wait till their 40s, 50s, 60s to start seeing the doctor because there's issues that are creeping up, right? Medical issues, but they're always loath to do it because they know their weight's going to be brought up. And so for me, I was fortunate in that I got pregnant when I was 30, and I feel I missed getting a lot of the issues that would have forced me to go see the doctor, like heart issues or diabetes. But yeah, no, if I could avoid going to the doctor, the OBGYN, anybody who was going to weigh me, I would. And I tell my coaching clients and I tell my listeners, set your boundaries with the doctor from the get-go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What do you say? Okay.
Yeah, when you see that nurse, the first off, you're going to meet the nurse first. You're not going to meet the doctor. And what I tell the nurse, or what I have people tell the nurse is, you know, I'm actually currently working on healthy habits and my weight. And I would really appreciate it if the doctor would not discuss that topic with me. I'm fully aware, and I don't really want to have that conversation. Setting that precedent, because the doctor kind of, I hate to say it, it's almost kind of scripted. They have to discuss it.
Okay.
And a lot of times it makes people feel very awkward and uncomfortable. So if you beat it to the chase and you say, okay, these are the things I'm doing. I really would like the doctor not to go through all this with me today. I'm here for a sinus infection, and that's really what I want help with. You know, and I know about the weight thing. And that's the thing. It's very disheartening to somebody who's overweight or obese because they already know they're overweight or obese. They don't need someone telling them that. I've had overweight and obese doctors tell me I need to lose weight. And I'm like, well, if it was easy, you would have done it by now, right? So my point is, set the ground. You put down what it is you want to discuss, set that with them when you go in, be proactive, not reactive. That's what I would highly encourage people to do.
Okay. I love that. And I have a lot of clients that I see that they have doctor's appointments for anything, medications, mental health issues. And then they go in and they panic, they freeze. And so I'm trying to work with people to write lists, record your thoughts, do whatever. I mean, that's okay. I love your advice of kind of be proactive then while going into the doctor. Thank you for that. The scale, I mean, I'm surprised. And I love the fact that you didn't just take the scale and throw it away. I mean, what kind of kept you going when you had to go get the new scale?
Sure. So reality is reality, whether we want it to be or not. And so I can sit there and pretend I'm not over 300 pounds, or I can face that and start making changes that I can live with in order to move it down. And so when you're looking at a brand new child that you're responsible for, you are now going to be educating them, teaching them, to play avoidance with yourself, in my way of thinking, would just be, in a way, teaching it to your child, where when we know what reality is, then we can make changes. And a lot of times when I was overweight, I didn't weigh myself. I totally avoided the scale. And that's very normal for most overweight and obese people. They avoid the scale until they choose to go on a diet. When they choose to go on a diet, then they start to kind of become obsessive about it. But for me, what I decided was not knowing wasn't serving me. It had gotten me to a place I didn't really want to be. And at least by knowing the reality, I could make a plan to actually start to work myself out of it. So hiding from it never got me where I wanted to be. So at least being aware of it would avoid me repeating the same behaviors over and over again.
That's perfect. I had written down something you had said I read on your site where you said it didn't work before. And I was going to ask you what was different this time. And you just lined that right up. Because I love talking to clients about, awareness and kind of just using that as data, removing the shame. And then what do we do with it now? So it sounds like that's a big thing that you work with, whether in your coaching or personally.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of shame around eating. And let's be honest. I mean, I'm sure if you've been paying at all any attention to weight loss stuff that's out there, whether it's a commercial, whether it's another podcast, there's a lot of stigma around what diet approach you should be taking. This idea of clean eating by its very name, it makes you think that it's virtuous to eat a certain way, right? There's a lot of verbiage that goes along in the dieting world that makes people think it's a kind of a character flaw that they would want chocolate, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And the reality is, no, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. I'm personally, I'm of the mindset you should always have a fun food every single day that you enjoy. Because here's what it comes down to. Where this got really different for me was I refused to handcuff myself to one diet approach. I refused to say, Heather will only be low carb. Heather will only be vegetarian, vegan. Heather will only be these things. And that's what I had done in the past. That's what got me to 300 pounds. I had yo-yo cycled so much with my weight that I got into a really unhealthy place, as opposed to, you know what, I'm going to eat normally. I'm going to still have treats. I'm not going to forbid that. I'm going to work on my binge eating behaviors.
Okay.
And where the scale goes, the scale goes. But I can't do this on-off thing anymore. I'm going to be on this diet Monday and then binge over the weekend and then get back on again Monday, which is what a lot of people fall victim to.
I hear that all the time. And I love what you're saying here, because even as a therapist, I think that people act surprised that they say, is it okay if I bring up food in here? And I think that people's relationship with food is it can be so toxic. And they judge themselves. They judge themselves against others. And so you're saying no more of the on-off, or change your relationship with food, it sounds like.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you still think a diet is going to fix your relationship with food, you're barking up the wrong tree. You've got to start to change your relationship with food in the sense of not condemning yourself for eating that bag of M&Ms, for not thinking somehow you're less valuable because you had a dessert. It's also acknowledging, going back to the reality of weighing yourself on the scale. It also goes back to what is your food tendencies? What do you like to eat? I've had many, and I'm sure you've seen this with other people, they get so tethered to all these different dietary beliefs, they don't even know what they like to eat. It's like you ask them and they look at you and they're like, I don't know, I've never thought about that, because we've become so detached from ourselves and what we like, and worrying about keeping up with the Joneses dietary wise, that we kind of glom onto whatever we think is popular, whether we like it or not. And that's the problem. We kind of have to start to be honest with ourselves, look at ourselves and what we like and what we don't like, and start to actually put together meal plans and food that we would enjoy eating to keep us at home eating and to make it manageable to where we can achieve a healthy body weight.
Well, let me ask you that. So I find that a lot of people they want to do what's right. They feel even at times they know what is right with regard to food. But you said that word meal planning. And I feel like in my office that becomes a pretty heavy topic, because that takes time and it takes thought and it takes going to the store, and the store can be a trigger. And do you have some kind of thoughts on how to successfully meal plan?
Absolutely. I'm actually putting a course together on meal planning specifically, but I also wrote a book on it. But my meal planning idea is not what most people probably are thinking. They're thinking somebody writes up meal plans and hands it to them with what you should eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
I find that is really unhelpful and really not getting somebody. I'm a teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime kind of person.
Okay.
What I think meal planning really should be is being consistent with structuring time into your week to actually write down what you want to eat for the week, actually going out, purchasing those ingredients, and then making it, removing the shame around the things you might. So if you want burgers and fries one night, buy burger patties, buy fries, write them down for Monday night's dinner. But people say, but Heather, it should be grilled chicken or broiled fish. No, it shouldn't. It should be the food you're going to want to eat. Because if it's not, then you're not going to be successful, right?
Yes.
So meal planning, if you think about it, you can actually do it on the rear. What I mean by that is just keep track of all the dinners you ate for this week. Write them down. Which ones did you really like? Which ones would you want to eat again? Then reverse that process the next week and say, well, last week I had spaghetti and meatballs on Monday. I had burgers and fries on Wednesday. I went out to eat on Thursday. Look at all those different meals and start to use those to help you put together a meal plan that you cook at home. Honestly, if you can get out of eating at restaurants and start making restaurant foods at home, you save tons of calories. It's an amazing transformation. I have one client, she does Chinese takeout at home, where she literally buys all the Chinese food she likes to eat at a takeout restaurant, but she makes it at home.
Wow.
She saves so many calories because she's not deep frying. She's not cooking in lots of oil. So it doesn't have to be this complicated, looking up all the recipes on Pinterest kind of thing. It really can be, what is it you like to eat? And then start preparing it at home. But scheduling out maybe 20, 30 minutes a week to do this. Make sure it's backed up to when you would normally go grocery shopping. Make sure the food you put on there, you actually want to eat, not you feel you should be eating. And then let's be honest about eating out for a second. If right now you're eating out 5 times a week, which a lot of people do eat out quite frequently. What if you were to just pre-budget 4 nights of eating out, drop 1, make that a meal at home, and then each week try to lower that number just a little bit, because then you're going to be having better control of the nutritional value of your food.
That's perfect. In my world of working with addiction, we call it harm reduction, right? So we don't have to go all or nothing. If you make progress, then give yourself some credit for that, and then use that data and move forward. I love it. Hey, so can I ask you? I had reached out to a lot of the people that follow me. I have a hard time saying my followers. That sounds like I'm some cult leader, right? But so I reached out and asked some questions. Do you mind if I do a little bit of a rapid fire then while I've got you? I mean, I'm loving everything.
Absolutely.
So, and first of all, I missed an opportunity on your video. You talk about 3 boys within 3 years. So I feel like there's a joke there about that's a weight loss strategy in itself of chasing small boys. I mean, was that effective as well?
Yeah, they definitely keep you. But you know, it's funny. They can also produce a lot of stress eating too. Yeah, there was times where I was like literally in the kitchen trying to eat, because when you've got 2 toddlers and a baby all at the same time, sometimes the stress load is just so hard for a mom. Even though physically, yeah, you're way active because you're chasing them and you're trying to keep up with them, but just the mental taxation. So a lot of what I work on is how to deal with those stressors, especially for moms, because that stuff can really wear on you day in and day out. But yes, it can be a double-edged sword, if you will.
Okay, so I have to bring some awareness here to. I have four kids. They're all teenagers or older now. But when they were little, I felt that dad need to eat the leftover chicken nuggets or fries or that sort of thing, and I think that can add more calories than I think we anticipate as well. Do you run into people that struggle with that?
All the time. So there's a couple techniques that I use. One is called button chair food on plate, which is you literally you can eat whatever you want. We don't put any hold on that, but it's not eating standing up and it's not pulling stuff off of other people's plates, right? So if you want your kids leftover chicken nuggets, you put them on your plate, you sit down and eat them. Most moms, it's that or dads, it's that mindless eating because we're stressed, we're nervous, we're feeling kind of frustrated or whatever. But if you know you have to put it on a plate and you have to sit down and eat it, and that might be the only focus that person has that week or couple weeks, it really is eye-opening for them. They didn't realize how much they were doing that behavior. So that is the first thing. And the second thing is making sure that you structure how your eating situations are to being, one, you're not hungry, because a lot of times what parents will do is they'll try to feed their kid first, then they try to eat. But if you're hungry, you're going to eat what's ever there. I mean, hunger takes over rational thought sometimes, right? So, so I always say maybe changing the order in which you feed your family. Maybe you eat first, or you have a really hearty snack, you feed your kids, then you eat your dinner. But don't set yourself up for failure by going into feeding your kids hungry, stressed, and tired, because more than likely you're going to eat off their plate. So it's those 2 things, the button chair, food on plate, and then really taking a look at how you structure your eating around your kids can be quite impactful.
I love that. My wife and I often just say, you know, when we're at a restaurant, okay, we got to go because we're just sport eating now. Now we're just eating fries because they're there or whatever else is on the plate. I love that. Okay, you kind of led me to think of one of the questions that I got asked a lot was, what are your thoughts about keeping a food diary? Are you a food diary keeper? Are you pro, con?
Yes, I am very, very pro on that. And I'll tell you why, because it goes back to the honesty piece with your weight. Mm-hmm. You also need an honesty piece with your food. And so that can look different for everybody. I know some people who like to do old school paper pencil journaling, and they literally just like to write what they ate, how they felt, their day progress, how things went. It's just being mindful. If we're not mindful of what we're eating, going back to the chicken nugget experience, if we're not writing those things down, and then we wonder, why did we gain a couple pounds this month? Well, if 3 out of the 5 days you were mindlessly eating off your kid's plate every single week, that's probably where those sneaky calories are coming in, right? So in that way, it can be very, very helpful. With a strict, just a straight up even habit change, it can be helpful. So a lot of times people think if I food journal, I should be aiming for a certain calorie target or a certain amount of macros or a certain amount of points. Like they put these restrictions on themselves from day one. Whereas I say, no, let's scratch that. Let's actually just food journal what you eat now. Like if you're hitting McDonald's every day for lunch, write it down. Write down what you're eating, become aware of it. If you want to see the calories and that information, go ahead and journal it, but become very aware of how you eat now. Then say next week or 2 weeks later after you've done that practice, what is it I could start to do to improve this? Maybe add some vegetables to lunch, maybe add a piece of fruit to breakfast, maybe, pass on the large fry and get a medium fry. Making those small adjustments over time are going to create the calorie deficit without it feeling overwhelming and really pressing you down. A lot of times people feel like, oh my goodness, I'm supposed to be eating 1,200 calories a day, and they were eating 3,000, right?
Yeah,
it's like, that's a huge change. Whereas if you know you're eating 3,000, you can make small changes in your habits to start to decrease the caloric consumption, which will then cause weight loss. So I look at it as a very good way to be honest and transparent with yourself and to highlight the habits that you need to change long term in order to sustain that lighter body weight you're shooting for.
And I wonder if this is one of these things where you as coaching clients and then me as therapists get two different views of this as well, because one of the notes I wrote down was I run into people, and this is a very almost a direct quote from a client I've been working with who said, well, I keep the food diary, but I'm not going to let my trainer know about the couple of full calorie sodas I drink because I don't want her to be disappointed in me. I mean, do you know when people are not being truthful with you?
Yeah, I tell them from day one, if we can't be honest, then you might as well not hire me.
Yeah.
Because, I think here's where I have an advantage versus most personal trainers. I've been 300 pounds. Yeah. I've been obese. I've had that life. And so I have a built-in trust with somebody who's in that same situation. If they see their personal trainer as being this exceptional human being who never eats inappropriately or who's really rigorous with their training and they've never struggled with overweight or obesity in the mind of your client, then they are going to feel uncomfortable sharing that because they're not going to think he or she understands. Now, what I have learned is that most personal trainers have a lot of eating issues. A lot of people in that field actually have very disordered eating and a lot of times even eating disorders. And they are trying to keep up appearances, which is a lot of pressure on them. So often they do understand, but they might not be revealing that to their client. But then the client has this idea, they put them up on a pedestal. This person can do no wrong. They're kind of above me in this regard. And so I want to look really good in their presence. And honestly, that comes down to good communication between that trainer and that client. And the trainer should be setting them straight on the fact that they probably do eat things that are off sometimes. Okay. And that if they are not completely honest, there's no point in them working together, because if that person's hiding 2 bags of M&Ms that they're not putting in their food journal, it's not serving the client. And it's really not serving the trainer, because the trainer's job is to find what's broken and start to help them fix it. And they can't do that if they're hiding what's broken from the trainer.
Okay, I love it. And okay, you mentioned, and again, on the kind of the rapid fire, you talk about in your story attending Weight Watchers. I'm curious, I had a couple of questions about what do you feel the role of accountability plays? Do you feel like people trying to lose weight in secret is one of the bigger challenges?
Yeah, I think it can go either direction. It depends on what kind of accountability you have. I see accountability in a support group setting as being very helpful. I see sometimes people using things like diet bets and competitions as quote unquote accountability. And I see those often backfire. So I tell people be very cautious as to how you view accountability and what kind you tap into, because you want to make sure it's something that's actually helpful for you versus something that's going to get quote unquote results, but ultimately set you up for future problems. So if you're engaging in things like diet bets or basically gambling your weight loss away, or doing it for some kind of public recognition, I always tell people, my experience with long-term weight maintenance, because see, here's the difference. What are you valuing? The momentary drop on the scale to get that 20 pounds off for a cruise or whatever, or do you want to keep it off past that point? And that's what I focus on. What happens once the cruise is over? Are you still keeping the 20 pounds off? I'm about 6 years out now of maintaining my weight loss. To me,
Wow.
that's more valuable than having lost the weight because the amount of regain statistics. So when we're thinking of a general support group, people of a common mindset that get it, it's very valuable. And that's what a lot of people need, because it's a constant battle mentally every day, even when you're maintaining. So you've got to make sure you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people. But if you're doing the weight loss under the guise of I'm accountable because I have this deadline I'm shooting for and there's this competition I entered, I often see that as being more destructive.
I appreciate you clarifying that. I actually have someone doing there is some talk of competition and that being a negative thing, and I'm in my office having to process. Then that brings along extra guilt or shame, because then people feel like they weren't able to stay motivated, even if there was money on the line, and kind of brings them down worse.
Oh, absolutely. I tried losing weight multiple times for weddings, big events, and I ended up gaining more weight before the actual thing happened, because we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be done by this date. And then when we start to slip, it just compounds the problem. Whereas I tell people, having done this for all different reasons and all different ways and failed miserably many, many times, what I say is you really have to ask yourself at some point, what is this you want for the long haul? When you're 60, 70, 80 years of age, do you want to still be battling the same 20, 30, 100 pounds? Or do you want to have it to where you're living your life, you're maintaining the weight loss, you're able to enjoy being free of this weight for the rest of your life? That's my goal. And look at it as, even if it took you 5 years to lose the weight, or 2 years or whatever, it's an investment. It's not wasted time, because then once you've learned all those habits to get that weight off, you now are in a good place to maintain it for the rest of your life. It's just a totally different mindset around it.
Okay. All right, Heather, I know I've only got you for a couple more minutes. Let me ask you one deep dive therapist question, and then after that, I want you to put your motivational speaker hat on. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right. Here comes the therapist. So, I do have so many people that just get to this point where I just hear this phrase over and over. I just need to do it. I just need to do it. And I feel like then I almost see this kind of just a glazed look, and then just this shame, this guilt. And so, you've been there. What, even when you see the scale at its highest, or you're and you're about to have a kid, and you talked about wanting to be the mom that is not on the sidelines. And so what was it though that, emotionally, mentally, what was it that finally got you to say, I'm doing it. I'm finally doing it?
Right. So for me, again, it was having my son. I was a teacher. I used to be a middle school teacher. And what I learned about kids is that they never really care what you say. They watch what you do. And so, I did not want to be the parent who's telling my kid, eat the healthy stuff, and I'm shoveling down several slices of pizza and eating ice cream. I didn't want to be living a hypocritical life from what I knew was important versus what I was doing. I wanted those two things to become in line. But I want to speak to the client that says, I know I just have to do it.
Yeah.
Where the shutdown happens and why that glazed look comes over their face is because they feel they must change everything all at once in order to get there. That's the piece that I really want to deliver home in this message, Tony.
Okay.
And maybe this will kind of go into my
do
hat
it.
on.
Let's do it.
I don't know. But that's, I want to stop you right there. I want you to hear me. I want you to stop right there. And I want you to understand that nothing is going to happen overnight from these changes. You are going to have to layer them in over time. And that feeling that holds you back from doing it is because you think you got to start exercising, start eating all the correct foods, eliminating all the treats, being on some kind of regimented food plan or meal plan. And I promise you, having lived this life and having coached many people through this process, that is absolutely not true. You do not have to do it like that at all. All you have to do, and this is where I started, Tony, I got up one day and I said, what does a healthy person do? They move. That's what they do. So I put my kid in a stroller and I walked him around the block. I didn't even touch my food. I just got into walking my kid around the block in a stroller. And when you're 300 pounds and you're pushing a stroller, that's work. Okay. I was doing that. Then I said, what's the next thing I could do? Oh, I know. I don't really eat that many vegetables. I buy them at the grocery store. They sit in the freezer. I throw them out because they get rot in the refrigerator, but I'm not eating them. Okay. So what if I maybe started to incorporate one more vegetable at lunch or one more piece of fruit at breakfast, bringing in quality food to my diet? Okay. And I didn't even restrict because, as I mentioned earlier, I actually struggle with binge eating, which if people listening to this struggle with that, they understand a lot of times dieting can bring that on because you're taking food away, which brings on the impulse to want to binge. So I couldn't always go that direction. Sometimes it was adding food, not taking food away. But what happens, Tony, over time, you start getting physical fitness in. You start bringing in all these fruits and vegetables, which adds bulk to your meals, maybe makes you feel a little more satisfied. The weight starts to creep down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And so somebody who's got a lot of weight to lose could be losing 5, 10, 20 pounds over the course of weeks and months just from making these changes to their habits. But notice I didn't wake up one day, start the eating program that somebody prescribed to me, hit the gym 3 or 4 times a week. I didn't even start going to the gym until my second son was born. So my point is these slow, sustainable habit changes are what they need to be focusing on. And the glazed look of, oh, I just need to do this is because they literally think they've got to do it all at once. Tomorrow they need to almost be living somebody else's life in order to get there. What they don't realize is from the time somebody starts this journey to the time they get it done, if they've done it in a healthy, sustainable way, they've had months, if not years, of practice with these habits that have gotten the weight off to keep it off. The after part that you see that you feel you must mimic, that took a long time to build. So give yourself the same grace and give yourself the same time. Focus on what habit can I bring in this week or next week and slowly layer them in. And then it won't feel overwhelming and you'll start to allow yourself to make progress over time.
Heather, that was wonderful. So I think that, you answered, checked the motivational speaker box. I was going to say, if somebody now is hearing this and they're going to be motivated, which I don't see how they wouldn't be motivated, what do they do first? And you're just saying, hey, just have some awareness, be honest. Have some movement. Don't feel like you have to do everything at once.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, I would just pick one bucket or the other. I would just say, okay, this week, if we're thinking about physical movement and we're thinking about eating, just say, which one do you feel the least resistance to do right now? A lot of people, if they're yo-yo dieters, they probably feel less resistance to adding in some movement. They might be willing to start going for a walk. Start there. Then, and keep it real. Let's keep it real. When I say movement, I don't mean you sit on the couch 5 or 6 or 7 days a week, and then tomorrow you're out training for a 5K. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you get your butt off the couch, you go for a 10-minute walk. Next week, it's 15 minutes. The week after that, it's 20 minutes. You layer and you build on. Then with the food, maybe right now you look at your food, you think, man, I don't see too many colors on my plate. I see a lot of browns and beiges and whites, but I'm not seeing a lot of colors. Why don't I add in some veggies? Not take away anything, add in. And then you start to layer that in. And the more that you practice these behaviors and really think about what would somebody at their ideal body weights, probably food and fitness look like, really like pay attention to that and say, long-term, that's what I'm headed for, but I need to make baby steps to get there. And that's what you're asking yourself right now. Am I willing to do a physical baby step or a nutritional baby step and move yourself in that direction? It will take a little bit longer, but here's again the thing. It's not as temporary, meaning we're shooting for permanent weight loss that doesn't come back. And the question you say to yourself is, what am I willing to do for the rest of my life? I'm willing to take 10 or 20-minute walks. I'm willing to eat a few vegetables through the day. I don't feel resentment. Then do that, because those are the things you're going to stick with. And when we're talking about weight regain, which is really the big issue when it comes to weight loss, you will, whatever you lose, you get to keep off because you did it in this more sustainable, maintainable fashion.
Perfect. Heather Robertson, thank you so much for taking the time today I can tell why you love what you do. You're passionate about it. It's worked for you. People can find you at halfsizeme.com. What else can we know about you?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I always tell people go to iTunes, subscribe to our free show. We just, I think, released 325 this week. So plenty of good content. Make sure that you like my message and that I align with what it is your thoughts are around this particular topic. But then if you are, I got plenty of, I really work on restructuring people's thoughts around these particular issues because there's a lot of misinformation, I believe, out in the world when it comes to diet, nutrition, and fitness and what's going to get you sustainable change over time. So I put together courses, I have ebooks, things like that. But I always say before you spend any money, go the free route, listen to me on iTunes, see if you like what I have to say. And then you can just go to halfsizeme.com to find the rest.
Perfect. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I wish you success. And I would love to have you back on down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for reaching out, Tony. You were really awesome. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. We'll talk to you later, Heather. Thank you.